So I will call the meeting to order at 6:35. So we'll introduce the committee members, and then I think what we'll do is introduce our guests as we get to the agenda items. So I'm Cheryl Tagayas. I'm the chair. That's Tabor.
Tabor Keeley, member.
Roxanne.
Hi, Roxanne Musto, member and select board representative to the committee.
And Regina.
Regina Campbell, member.
All right, thank you. So we're going to take things in a little different order given our guest schedules. We're going to go right to the discussion of the shuttle bus service. So that will be followed by the MAPC visioning update, and then we'll go to the local historic district study committee, and then we'll go back and fill in with the other agenda items. So Deborah has been looking into
Wait,
the idea of the
Cheryl, can you hold one moment?
Sure.
So my colleague is coming. He said, text me when they're ready. And I didn't think you'd be ready so quickly. So I just texted him, but go ahead, you can go, but he's going to pop on.
Okay, so I'm just going to, well, Elaine's coming on, so we'll give her a minute to connect.
So sorry, I had a meeting that went over. How are you?
No problem, Elaine. So Elaine Benson is also a member of the committee. And Elaine, we said we're going to go right to the shuttle bus service discussion, and then MAPC visioning update, and then the local historic district study committee, since we have guests for all of those topics, and then we'll go back and fill in. We do have some timelines that we want to work with. Deborah has another meeting to go to. Javier has a time frame as well. So I'm going to ask if we can try and do both the first two topics within 25 minutes each, if we can. And
Cheryl, excuse me. I'm
Sure.
so sorry. Dick Burke just said he's trying to get in.
Oh, okay.
And he's unable to get in. And I don't know if there's anybody else waiting, but he just reached out to me.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure he gets in. Just check if there's anyone else if you can. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No problem. I see that. Do you know how he's trying to get in? Do you see him in the waiting room, Cheyenne?
No, there's no one in the waiting room.
All right.
I can resend in the link.
Okay, great. All right, so just a little bit of background. Deborah's been thinking about and looking into the idea of utilizing Northeastern students to assist with exploring what other communities have been doing for intra-town shuttle bus service. And she has contacted a colleague as well at Northeastern who's joining us tonight as well. And you can introduce him too, Deborah. And they've been...
Can I just say, I'm actually representing the Partnership for Healthy Milton. So we did strategic planning. We're a nonprofit public health board in town and collaborate with the health department and other folks in town. And we did strategic planning, and one of our strategic priorities was thinking about sort of intra-town shuttle transportation. So I'm representing. So go ahead.
Okay. Right. So we talked about this at our last meeting. This idea that was in the master plan and has come up in other discussions, the Climate Action Planning Committee as well, as the organization that Deborah mentioned. So I think there's interest in this topic. And so we had agreed at the last meeting that we should explore whether we can assist in this effort, at least with potential funding or using a conduit to bring people together to talk about this topic. So Deborah, would you like to give us an update on that suggestion that you had thought maybe we could get some assistance utilizing students?
Yes, so I'm sorry that Peter Firth is not here. So I teach at Northeastern in Beauvais, and my department is the Department of Public Health and Health Sciences, Beauvais College of Health Sciences, but he teaches in the College of Engineering, and I found him actually as part of this project, and he has transportation expertise. That's his area of expertise. And when I pitched, is he here? Peter, are you here yet? So when I pitched the idea to him to engage a student, right, I would serve as the liaison between MPIC and Northeastern, and he would work with an engineering student to do what I'm calling an environmental scan, which for lack of a better word, it's data gathering, it's figuring out what other people are doing. And so I wrote up a proposal, which I didn't get to Cheryl in time. I didn't get to you guys in time, but Cheryl, I literally just emailed it, the revised version, which has highlights. I don't know if you saw the one I sent earlier. Anyway, so Peter Firth and I came up with a proposal, and the proposal entails hiring a student, having them work summer sessions, semester 1 and 2, which is May, June, July, and August. And the deliverable would be a report at the end of it. And the beginning would be working with you all and coming up with a list of questions. The proposal has the list of questions that this group came up with last time and that we emailed about. So I consolidated a lot of the information that was flying around between us by email, and then the conversation. Oh, there we go. So I should preface it by saying this is preliminary because obviously you all have to approve, but also I have to go back to Partnership for Healthy Milton, which is actually the meeting I'm having at 7:15. And then obviously Northeastern has to approve it. So this is all just preliminary. So Cheryl, if you could, so background is just the context, which you all know. And I wrote, you can see the second paragraph, a few community groups have expressed interest, not just us, Partnership for Healthy Milton, but also the Milton Climate Action Committee. And then I saw some other emails recently. So there's a lot of community interest. So if you could scroll so I can see the project scope. So I can just show you all this project scope.
Can you see that? Okay.
Yeah, at the bottom. So this data gathering project will seek to understand financing, cost, ownership, operations, and policy practices of existing public local transit shuttle services in Massachusetts and nationally if relevant. Data collection will include both qualitative and quantitative components, such as collection of archival and current data from private and public databases, regulatory agencies, funders, nonprofits, and related sources. Interviews will be conducted with X number of key stakeholders. That is up to you all or us to figure it out. I just threw in 8 to 10 because that's what was suggested at the meeting last time. Interview key stakeholders from Massachusetts communities and also folks in Milton about their town shuttle services, and a final report will describe the findings and make recommendations for next steps. So go to the top. So project timelines, you see at the top, research and report completion will be about 40 to 60 hours. A research assistant recruitment, meaning the student, would begin in April or whenever this is approved. Project length, as I already said, it would be over the summer. Examples of potential key stakeholder interviews and resources. I just copied and pasted what we exchanged in our emails. As you can see, there's other towns who do it in all very different ways. And so, and then there were some, you see at the bottom of the list, it says resources. Those were also links that were shared. And then project research tasks and questions, right? And these come right out of the conversation we had last time. So we talked about financing. Who are the funders? What's the revenue? Who is the fiscal conduit? Local, regional, state, feds, private foundation. What's the cost? What are startup and annualized costs for purchase or lease, maintenance, repairs, fuel, etc.? Ownership. Who owns the shuttle? Is it the municipality? Is it a private nonprofit? Is it a partnership between them? Who took the lead on program development? Meaning, was it a department, a board, a committee? Operations. Where is the shuttle housed? Who is responsible for maintenance? Who pays and supervises the employees? How many are there? What's the salary range? What are their hours? Types of training requirements? You go up to the next one, the next page. And then the last bucket is shuttle practices and policies. What are the hours of operation? Is it fixed route or by appointment? Are there shuttle bus stops? Are youth allowed to ride alone? And then there's a bunch of other questions that were also asked. Under SAN third-party contracts, are services for seniors separate or consolidated into one program? What are towns' methods for tracking usage? Is carbon footprint calculated to measure service impact? Methods of public outreach prior to launch of service? And then what information is available on town websites? Anyway, so I think Peter is on. And Peter, are you on? Do you want to introduce yourself and take over if you're on? Is he on? There,
Yes,
he's on.
on.
I see him. It's okay. We see you.
Thank you for joining us, Peter. If you can just unmute yourself, you can start.
I think he's trying.
Okay.
Can you all unmute him from? Can the
Cheyenne, are
admin?
you able to?
I could only ask a new.
Peter, if you want to call
Okay.
me on my. Yay!
Yeah, I do Zoom on my computer all the time, and now I'm on my phone. I don't know how to unmute myself. Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm a professor at Northeastern. My field is transportation planning. I don't recognize any of you, but if you knew of Peter Firth living in Milton back in the 1990s, that's me. I was living in East Milton, and I was a professor at Northeastern then. So, from what I understood from Deborah is that you want a student study to get an idea of some feasibility. When I just listening to all the things that Deborah was saying there, I was thinking, this sounds like a $60,000 study, and that's not what we're going to do. So, but it really would be valuable for you to have somebody do case studies on the other similar shuttles that you want to learn from, what kind of system they have, how they organize it, and then how those things might apply in Milton. So my sense from talking to Deborah was, you want to get an idea of what's possible. So this is not designing a service, but it would be letting you know what others have done and how those issues might apply in Milton, and then you can take it from there.
So
Peter,
I had stopped at the task you had, but we can just talk about that. I had paused to let you describe the task 1, task 2, and the delivery.
Yeah. So the main task is to study to look at what these other towns have done, Beverly and Reading, and what the other towns that are listed there. How do they organize it? How have they succeeded? How much does it cost them? Who's paying for it? And what kind of service are they providing? So that you can get a feeling of, if you want to provide this kind of service, it's going to probably cost about that amount. And that's the main thing. And then the secondary thing would be we talk with you all, get a better idea of what kind of service you're envisioning. Maybe there are a couple alternative visions that you have, and then say something about how the lessons from those other towns would inform the feasibility of those alternatives. Having public transportation is a tough thing because life is complicated and busy. Everybody wants to go a different place. Public transportation is about getting a bunch of people who all want to go to the same place at the same time. So it's, if it was really easy to do it inexpensively, everybody'd be doing it. But let's find out what people are doing and what can be done. If there could be a few point to point or a few aligned services that people want to use, whatever, we'll learn from them. And that's so then as Deborah was saying, we can find a student in like May, June is a good time to get somebody. We'd put in a little bit of effort trying to supervising them. We have some really bright students. This is not a topic that needs, deep expertise, and they could find things out, write you a summary that would be valuable.
Okay, so committee members, questions for Deborah and Peter? Let's see, I'm going to, since I'm screen sharing, if you have hands raised, maybe Cheyenne can tell me whose hands raised. Okay, Tabor, thanks.
So I guess my question is that I know Milton prides itself on being very different from all other towns, but let's be serious. We're pretty much like all other towns, except maybe the commercial part. And all these other towns have done it to varying degrees of success. And it seems like we would want to learn from their mistakes and successes all the way along the way. I mean, what went right, what went wrong? And I know we had just locally or nearby, Dedham had one for a year and a half, and it didn't work out. What makes the one in Acton work so well? And the other ones, is Stoneham really working well, or is it on its way out too? I don't know. Those are things like it seems like the first items that make it would most of us as just committee members, but as voters in the town would look at it and say, this is not at all comparable, or this is exactly like us, and could put two and two together. But somehow we need to be able to consolidate the info down to something that we as non-experts can digest.
Yes, very much so. And I have not studied those systems yet, so I don't know. And a big question is who's using them. Is it seniors? Is it teens? Is it people who don't own cars? I don't know.
One of the things that I think I had heard also as an interest in this is we do have public transportation via the trolley, which is extension of the Red Line, and getting people to that trolley is something that could be looked at as well. So not just not just seniors.
Let me just say something about that. So, Milton, like so many other suburban towns, was built on trolleys before cars were well known, and the 245 bus that was an old trolley line that took people to the commercial center where they could do their shopping, and that was Mattapan Square. And there isn't that much commercial, worth going to now in Mattapan Square, and that's one of the reasons that people are talking about this, because if you want to go grocery shopping, well, that's probably not where you want to go. The Stop and Shop is over here, and the supermarkets in Lower Mills and Quincy. So it's kind of like you have a route that one time met that need, and it's the same route that it was 80 years ago. and the places and destinations have changed. So, yeah, it's an interesting question.
Okay, I see Elaine has her hand up.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. This is really interesting. Hey, thanks for taking the time to put all this together. It looks very, very thoughtful, and I have no doubt that you're very bright students. I've been thinking a lot about this. As I saw your email come through, Cheryl, and I'm a little bit I have a little bit of hesitancy. I think if there was no cost to Milton for a student research project, I'd be fully supportive. I'm a strong advocate for student engagement. I think it'd be really fascinating to gain insights, into the facets of an in-depth study, as it pertains to Milton. I have some experience with privatized town shuttles and the how expensive that these services can be, and I think my preference would be to do like a broader focus, maybe beyond just the intra-town shuttle, and doing some sort of emphasis on like, how do we incentivize alternative transportation modes over single occupancy vehicles? How do we maximize the use of existing resources like the MBTA trains? I think these, intra-town shuttles are significant expenses even for communities like Watertown and Cambridge, and those communities have significant commercial and economic activity, which we just don't really have here in Milton. And I think that they also have, like employer contributions and business tax base that help subsidize these operations. And, these are all things I'm sure that would come out in the study, but, Milton's really, has this residential character and limited commercial tax revenue. So I think it would, face really significant financial hurdles to sustain a shuttle service. So I just wanted to share that feedback. I think it would be, if we're going to spend the money, especially given that, the predicament that Milton is in right now with finances, I think it would be good to see something that's focused more broadly than just an intra-town shuttle.
Okay, thanks, Elaine. Regina, you have your hand up? I think it's down now.
I'm here. I just had a question for Peter, and that is, and Deborah. Would the student be would it be solely an engineering student, or would this be a collaboration between an engineering student and a public health student?
We'll try to find a qualified student, and it could be an engineering student. It could be we have a school of urban and regional policy. There are a lot of students in environmental science and environmental policy who are interested in this kind of thing. So it could be any of those. This is not hardcore engineering that needs an engineering student. It needs
right.
It takes somebody who has a feeling for transportation. And understands, that to run buses, you have to have schedules and routes, and it costs money, and who's going to pay for it, and
right.
So it's and it would only be one student, so whoever that student is, yeah.
But to answer your question, I have access to lots of public health students, undergrad, masters, and PhD, and so if there was an angle to this that made sense, yes, I could. Yeah, we could engage a student. The budget right now, we thought $25 an hour for about 40 to 60 hours. So figure, it's about $1,500. So in terms of the budget, we wouldn't necessarily be adding another student, but I certainly can. And I'm wondering what you had in mind in terms of the public health data collection piece.
Yeah, no, I was just curious, from an engineering perspective, how interested an engineer would be in this type of project. That's all. I was just curious.
Roxanne?
Thank you for that question.
Hi. So this is the first time that I've seen this write up on the budget. So I'm just looking at it live right now. Can you walk through the budget revised? So it looks, from what I can see, it looks like $1,500 for the student, and the faculty is $2,500. And then, can you just walk through that a little bit?
Yeah, well, it's those two things, and there's fringe benefit that get applied. Yeah, that's all. And
Sorry,
and
so
this is assuming that that we can find an approved mechanism through the university in which the town would pay, like a department to do this. The department would disperse the funds. They'd be done without standard overhead, which would add another 57% to the. So we're hoping we can get this through without the 57% overhead. And I understand if we can't do that, well, then that probably makes it unaffordable.
So I'm sorry, are we looking at the 4,000 then in total, or was it the fringe that needed to be added to it, Peter?
If you see the table with the amounts,
Yes.
can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. If you look at the table with the amounts, I think it's all spelled out there. There's student wages, and then there's a very small fringe for students. There's faculty, $2,500, and some fringe on that, and then that's what it adds up to. Just the sum.
So the total then that we'd be looking at is the 4,762. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Apologies about the formatting. When I copied and pasted it very quickly, it looks like the formatting got messed up.
I see.
I'll send you I'll resend you a clean copy, Cheryl, after after tonight.
And no problem. Just so everyone knows, Deborah's been working to get this together, and she didn't have it to us until just before the meeting. So we're all looking at it live, and that's why we have both of them here to ask questions of. So go ahead. Roxanne, you had a further question?
I did. So I know one of the earlier speakers, I believe Elaine, talked about when you have a student, this is a lot of money to spend when the town right now is in a tough situation in terms of finances. Anybody who's been following that along knows that this is sort of a tough time for this. I'm wondering, Deborah, if you've gone to other sources for this. Are there any grants to do any of this kind of work for the preliminary work on this? Have you looked at a grant that would cover just the this portion so that we'd have information?
Well, we as a group just talked about it at the last meeting, so that wasn't brought up as a next steps.
I think just looking at the cost, I think that was why I'm asking that.
I have two reactions to that. The first is, if a $5,000 cost to do a study is a big problem, I don't see how you're going to run any shuttle service.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing is, if you want it done free, that might be possible because students need projects to work on. I could think of one program in which this might be a really good project for a student to work on. The problem is you have to fit it to the timetable of when a student is in a class like that. If this were coming, if I'd known of this in October, there's a class like that starts in January, but it's too late for that now. So if in a lot of towns, if they wanted this information, they'd hire a consulting company, and it would be a $50,000, $60,000 project. So this is really cheap. Now, I'm not trying to get your business. I'm not trying to make money on this, by no means. So if there might be a way to get it done free, if you're willing to wait, but just on a practical note, if Milton is in this tight a spot, unless, this is a real bargain, and if you can't afford this kind of bargain, then you're going to have a hard time operating a service. But like I said, I'm not trying to set you up for, of course we're going to do it. No, and I'm not trying to get it. If we want to serve you, if I just put out a call now for a volunteer student to work on this, I wouldn't get anybody. If you want to get work done on it, we got to offer people some pay. So, and this is very, very short money, but it's real money.
So I'll just
if
tag
I may,
on that he's right about if we do wait till September, you could do a capstone project, and that would fit really nicely in the capstone project for no money if you want to wait till September. That's a good point.
I think I just want to follow up. So I didn't want by any means want to say that I didn't think, this is worthy and so forth. It's just that we're in a situation where, 5,000 here, 5,000 there, it adds up. And I think, so that's one thing, but you did make a good point, which is, if you can't really afford that, what's going to happen further down on having a shuttle? I think we really have to find out what the cost would be to that. And, I don't know if the town can or cannot do that, sustain something like that. So that's where I'm coming from, just in terms of that. So I didn't mean it in a negative way. I didn't want you to take it that way, but I just want to be honest with that, because that is a concern.
I understand that. Roxanne, and for the rest of you, something else to think of. There are a few towns that offer this kind of service at almost no cost, because they get some retired people who do it for free. It gives them a chance to chat with people. Now, when you got volunteers like that, you can't ask them to work more than 2 or 3 hours at a time. And, there are a few towns that have managed to do that because they have a lot of, but those tend to be in retirement communities. I don't have a strong feeling that you'd find that here in the Boston metro area.
So let's go to Elaine,
Thank you.
who has her hand raised.
No, I want to say, Peter, you make a great point, like the 5,000 being cost prohibitive. I think just some background, I'm not sure if you're aware, like Milton's facing a $10 million override right now just for level service funding for schools around there. Don't quote me. So like 100%, $5 million.
Yes, I completely understand. Yes.
Yeah, like it's a bargain. You're right. Like you'd pay way more. I think though that just kind of underscored like my skepticism around exactly to your point, like the town being able to provide and what could be, unless you can do some creative solutions, just like you proposed, with retirees. I just think a shuttle service program can be really expensive, but I love the idea. I just wanted to add, Deborah, around a capstone project, if that's something that you think could be feasible. And it would certainly be interesting, to learn what other communities are doing. It doesn't mean that's not something that we could do at some juncture in time, but yeah, that's all I had.
So Regina's got her hand up, but I got an idea. Regina, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to speak to the question of whether Deborah had applied or thought about applying for grants. I think one thing that is important to consider is that while our town is bound up in the MBTA, lack of taking responsibility for what we're supposed to do by law, we are not eligible for certain grants that could fund something like this, could fund shuttle service. So it is not just a short-term problem, but it may be a longer-term problem as well. But that's not for you guys to worry about. That's definitely for our elected officials and our townspeople to worry.
So here's the other idea I came up with in response to I think it was you, Elaine, that said, looking at a bigger picture, is have some people in the town look at that Route 245. Route 245, I mentioned one end was Mattapan because there was a lot of shopping in Mattapan. The other end was Quincy Center. And if you go back to 1950, Quincy Center was the biggest shopping area in Metro Boston outside of downtown Boston. You know, everything you wanted was there. And so the MBTA had this route that went, you know, through the denser parts of Milton, and then would take you at either in either direction, one direction to Quincy Center and the other direction to Mattapan Square. Well, things have changed, and you know, when people who are going grocery shopping and shopping and other things like that, they need to go to other places. So one idea would be to think about just rerouting the 245 to meet some of those needs, and then that wouldn't cost you anything if you could make a proposal to the MBTA.
So I see Cheyenne has her hand raised, and I think she's going to probably ask me for a time check here. Is that right, Cheyenne? Yeah. All right.
That's
Since
correct.
we got this just now, Deborah, I'd like to suggest that the committee bring this up at our next meeting so that everyone has a chance to review the scope of work. And what I would like to have folks bear in mind, and maybe we can start with this next time, is the reason that this was brought to us is relative to public health. It's also relative to what we heard from folks related to the library, how we shouldn't necessarily maybe build parking if we can get people to the library. We've heard about how students want to have ways to get around town. And we know that if we can have less miles in cars and more in shared services, that it can help with climate change. So there's multifaceted reasons to look at this. And to me, we shouldn't lose sight of that when we're looking at, and I look at it as an investment, a $5,000 investment to explore this further seems to me a very wise investment for a town to make. So with those parting comments, I would like to thank Peter and Deborah. We'll share out this proposal. And our next meeting is April 1st. And so I'd like to invite you back then so that we can be respectful of our next agenda item and guest. So we really appreciate you coming. And we hope to see you on April 1st, okay?
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
I'm going to stop my share here. Okay, sorry to keep you waiting, Sasha and Javier. Just again, maybe introduce yourselves and what you are helping us with, just for those who might be tuning in for the first time to this topic, okay?
Well, thank you, Cheryl. And before we start, may I have access to share the screen? We have a PowerPoint.
Cheyenne, can you grant that access, please?
Yes, it's on multiple parts.
Well, that is happening. I first want to thank everybody for being in the space, and I want to thank Cheryl and Cheyenne for inviting us here in the space. I'll start. My name is Javier Gutierrez from Metropolitan Area Planning Council, Community Engagement Department, and I'll pass it to my colleague Sasha to introduce herself.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sasha Purdy, and I work with Javier on the community engagement team.
Let me just share my screen. So a little bit about why we're here. Again, we're here just to give you an update on what we've been up to, what we've been doing in terms of the visioning sessions with 7 Brushwood Road and Pagoda Circle. We'll guide you through, we'll explain what the process has been at the same time. We'll provide you a little bit of an analysis of what has come up in the conversations that we've had with some partners in Milton. And lastly, we'll finish it up with kind of next steps as where we are, and we'll take some questions. So to begin with, sorry, excuse me. To begin with, just an overview for those who this is your first time. Late summer, early fall, of last year, the town of Milton's planning department reached out to us with a proposal and potential collaboration efforts of really doing a resident visioning session that would entail 7 Brushel Road and Pagoda Circle. And through those efforts, we say yes. And those really are those efforts are really to really get the stakeholders who live proximate to these sites a clear understanding of what is possible, either for a usable space of 7 Brushel Road or for recreational purpose space with the adjacent site of 7 Brushel Road, but at the same time for the Pagoda Circle. So with that, I will start off with just grounding ourselves in the conversation, just to really give you a little bit of sense of the 7 Brushel Road and our adjacent parcel. So as you know, this site sits in the northwest side of Milton, really on the borderline of Mattapan. And this area, with the conversations with the town's planning department and others in Milton, we've learned that this side of town is characterized by the following. It is densely populated. It has the highest concentration of renters. It also has the highest concentration of people of color and the highest concentration of low-income people. Turning our focus to Pagoda Circle, this is a site that sits right embedded in a community in the northwest side of Milton. It is really an open green space, but what's the charm about this site, as many may know, is the oak trees, the small oak trees that really embed, and the rocks that really embed the site, with the other half being a site of gathering of people coming together. Really what we learned at the same time, and as it relates to this site, and my colleague Sasha will dive into a little bit more, is that this site has been and is currently used for people in the neighborhood. It is used for people to walk, for pickup games, for exploring natural outcroppings and woods, and for block parties, which they had, I believe, earlier this year or last year. And it is also a school bus stop, but it's also served as an informal gathering space. In response to how we are going about this, so really, as I mentioned, September, November, we really use that time to really build up the scope, build out the contract, and have a kickoff meeting with our colleagues and our friends in Milton. Since December to now, we've been engaged in one-to-one conversations, and Sasha will outline who we talked to and kind of the themes that we have outlined since then. And then between March and May, we are hosting several community visioning events. We already have two small events established. One is happening on March 18th with youth, and the other one is happening on March 19th with an Positive Esplanade initiative, folks from the Positive Esplanade initiatives. And then we have other events coming up either late March, early April, or during April, to really finalize, will give us enough opportunity to really finalize in May a report and really close the project. So now I'll pass it to Sasha.
Thank you, Javier. Yeah, so just again to reground us in the one-on-one conversations that we had as part of this process, we really wanted to understand people's relationship to Milton and relationship to space in Milton, what people's priorities and interests were for 7 Brushel Road and Pagoda Circle, and how people wanted to be involved in the process moving forward, as well as enhancing the network that already exists of people who are interested in what's possible in these spaces. Based on this, we were able to conduct a landscape analysis of who is involved in these neighborhoods, who's going to be most impacted by these decisions, what role they might have to play in this process, so that we can make sure that as we're moving forward, we're engaging the right populations of people to have input on any visioning that takes place. Next slide, Javier. So I'm just going to cover a little bit about the one-on-one conversations that we had. We've had 19 conversations to date, which is a little bit higher than we had originally planned, but we kept on getting recommendations from folks about important people to connect with in the town. So we tried to connect with as many people as possible. There were folks who we weren't able to connect with, either because of their schedules or ours, but we tried to get a broad swath of representation from various pockets in the town. So on here, we included some of the represented perspectives across Milton. So Milton parents, specifically, we had representation from parents from the Tucker Elementary School, as well as a second elementary school. We had folks from Friends of Pagoda Circle. Many people we spoke with are active town meeting members. We spoke with the Department of Conservation and Recreation, who are responsible for the site at the moment, as well as the Milton Department of Recreation. A lot of the people we spoke with live in West Milton and live near Seven Brush Hill Road or near Pagoda Circle, so folks who are geographically located close to the sites. We tried to get youth perspective. We haven't spoken with young people directly in this process yet, but we were able to speak with the chair of the youth task force, who was able to kind of summarize a lot of what she hears from the youth that she works with. A lot of the people we connected with represent precincts 1, 5, and 10. We also connected with the Neponset River Watershed Association and the Parkway Methodist Church. So again, trying to get representation and perspectives from various pockets and areas of Milton, really trying to understand the picture from all angles. And of course, many people hold multiple identities or roles. So there are folks who are a Milton parent and a town meeting member and part of Friends of Pagoda Circle, for example. So definitely a lot of overlap in the identities people held. Next slide, Javier. So these are the themes that came up from the discussion, and I just want to highlight that overwhelmingly, pretty much in every conversation that we had, the need for constructive youth gathering and engagement spaces came up first and foremost as the top priority. It's what people started with, it's what people led with, it's what people emphasized to us at the end of the conversation. And I don't think we had a single conversation where youth engagement was not brought up. And specifically spaces where young people can gather on their own terms, but are spaces that parents know will be safe, and where young people can be supported as they're gathering, but are not necessarily tied to school activities like sports or an after school play or things like that. So some sort of space that is structured, but allows agency for young people to decide how they're spending time in that space and connecting with each other. The other themes that came up in our conversations were interests and needs for more group activities and more group adult wellness options. So thinking about group classes that people could participate, opportunities for folks to move their bodies in ways that meet an array of needs, not just having physical equipment that people can use, but also having classes or other opportunities that prompt movement and physical activity, as well as connection with one another. A big issue that was raised is that there are not many spaces available to rent for gathering in Milton, aside from church spaces and the library, and that the demand there is very high. And so folks often are not able to use kind of public spaces for meetings or gatherings, so having a space where rentals would be available. We talked a bit about having just for more opportunities for people to come together. And that having some sort of interactive space at 7 Brush Hill Road could generate more engagement, specifically from precincts 1 and 10. And across all of this, a big emphasis was for a gathering space that would be inclusive for every Milton resident and community member, where every person can fully participate. An emphasis that specifically this part of town and kind of the more western part of Milton is really in need of a space where people can go and can connect with each other. Next slide, Javier. So these were some of the ideas that came up in terms of activities that could be held at 7 Brush Hill Road and or at Pagoda Circle. The big difference with Pagoda Circle and 7 Brush Hill Road is that when we spoke with people about Pagoda Circle, a lot of folks recognize that many of the activities are going to have to be seasonal just by virtue of the fact that Pagoda Circle is an outdoor space. 7 Brush Hill Road, a lot of the focus of the conversation was on the building, and if that building were to be restored, how that can be used for indoor activities as well. So that's kind of some of the difference that we heard in the conversations. But again, these were some of the ideas, and I've noted a few of them in sort of the needs that were raised, but having a basketball court specifically was suggested by multiple people, as well as other sports activities. Zumba, dance, yoga, other group classes for young people and for adults, having a gaming room for youth where they can play games, I think both virtual or digital on an Xbox or PlayStation or something of that sort, as well as maybe board games and other types of games that are more interactive and interpersonal. One suggestion that came up was having a social worker in this building for young people so that there's a trusted adult that young people could go to if they were spending time in this space. Some ideas around kayaking and canoeing due to the proximity of 7 Brush Hill Road to the river came up as well, although I will note that from NEPRA in particular, they noted that if it would be great to do kayaking and canoeing from that parcel, and it would require setting up some safety infrastructure as it's not the easiest part of the river to kayak and canoe on. So we would want to make sure people are able to do that safely. But they did feel like that could be a possibility. So these were just, again, some ideas. Block parties also came up specifically in relation to Pagoda Circle as something that could be enhanced or have more of. And lastly, folks talked a little bit about having some sort of retail space, whether that's food, a coffee shop or a food cart, something where folks could kind of gather over breaking bread. Next slide, Javier.
So thank you, Sasha. So in terms of next steps, we are envisioning a couple of things. Number one, we are envisioning before now and the end of the project to really have 4 community visioning sessions. Our approach, as it is in the community engagement department, we believe that every city, town, or every community has a social fabric. And with that is that social fabric of that community, of that or that city or town is there. It may be broken, it may be strong, but it's there. And usually our approach is to tap into that social fabric, no matter how small, how big it is, and begin with that social fabric and then connect to the other. So as we are thinking ahead in terms of these upcoming visioning sessions, as I mentioned, we have one with the Deposit Initiative members in the next coming week and a half. We also have one with the youth, and we're working closely with the West Milton Association members to actually do something small in the next couple of weeks with them as well. From that conversation, that will transpire into a on-place activity, whether it's in place, doing something at 7 Brush Hill Road and doing something at Pagoda Circle. This will allow not only people that are proximate to the community to come in and share their thoughts around the site and share their thoughts about what is possible on those sites, but at the same time, it will allow the larger community to really participate and be active in this process. And most importantly, what we're trying to get, and the reason why we're moving into kind of being outside, is there really is a difference when we talk within a indoor and do a visioning session indoor versus when you're out and in the environment and you have to really work with what the environment is giving to you. Sometimes that changes people's mindset. Um, um, and then really based on the one-on-one conversations and community engagement events, we'll put together a final report documenting the community interest for the parcels, as well as documenting the process for community engagement itself, and provide you a little bit of some considerations to take place, but some observations as well that we learned throughout the process. And then lastly, once we finalize the report, we will definitely share with this group. We can come back and provide a presentation with this group, but at the same time, we would also share with the project participants that have participated in this process, so they actually have an understanding of how their input was provided in the report, but at the same time for them to have at their disposal. And with that, again, thank you again, and I'll stop sharing and I'll turn the screen. I'll turn it over to you, Cheryl, and to the group for any aha moments or any questions you may have.
Great, thank you, Javier and Sasha. Appreciate your recap of where you are with the process. Committee members, questions for them? You covered it so well. I don't see any hands. All right. So I did have a question. If committee members just wanted to sit in to listen, would there be one of these sessions that would be best for that? That they could just, I'm not suggesting be participants necessarily, but just be observers. Is there one of these which might make sense for that?
Yeah, I think there's possibility for the committee, for the members to sit in at either at the a week and a half meeting, but we would just want to make sure and touch base with the partners that we've engaged and just make sure that they're okay with having people sitting in the space and observing. And at the same time, we would have to make sure we would have to touch base with the youth coordinator just to make sure that if there's a space that they can sit into those spaces. But I can definitely, or we can keep you up to date, Cheryl, in terms of what comes out of that. We just don't want to speak for the folks who are inviting us into their space.
Sure, no problem. So I think you've made a lot of progress. I think that you've reached out to a lot of the folks that were suggested, both by the planning department and others. And I think as you made phone calls, you were probably being asked to reach out further, which is why you did more calls than you anticipated, which it looks like you had a good cross section though, as well. So I appreciate that. And if there's no further questions, just look forward to hearing from you after the community meetings and as you're getting ready to put that report together.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Okay. We will now move to the Local Historic District Study Committee. Again, we just got a document from the chair of the committee, Larry Loeffler, so I'll have him introduce himself in a moment before the meeting. But you will recall back in January, Larry had reached out to me about some of the questions that we had raised at a meeting last year, probably before they were going to town meeting, with an article to adopt a local historic district in the Milton Village area. And so Larry had reached out to say that they would like to review some answers to those questions or concerns and give us an update on where they are. So with that, Larry, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Cheryl, and thank you for the committee. Local Historic District Study Committee, I'm a volunteer, like many of you, and like what seems to run Milton town. And congratulations to all of us for being involved. But it was going to be a 1-year commitment. We're now on 4 years. It was arduous process because we did it definitively. We studied everything. We studied national historic districts, local historic districts, state historic districts, differentiated it all. Milton is an incredibly complex and historic town. We ended up choosing Milton Village as the designation for what we'd like to determine to present to the next town meeting as our first local historic district. Now, that comes with some responsibilities and some protections. It does not essentially change anything in that particular area, but it does set up some guidelines. What was not understood when we presented to town hall last year, to the town meeting last year, is that this is a 2-step process. Where we are right now is the state has approved our proposal. The town, when it went in front of the town meeting, I had met with every single stakeholder, including this committee. In fact, the idea to choose Milton Village came essentially from Cheryl, and your work in your other committees prior to this makes perfect sense. And I'm not going to bore you with why Milton Village is. It really is the first place to start. The difficulty lies in the historical Massachusetts Historical Committee has approved all of the language because we were directed to use cut and paste what has already existed for the 200 plus towns and villages in Massachusetts. We cut and paste. Now, what we didn't understand is how that interfaces with the town, and then how that town within the town, how this local historic district interfaces with the zoning board, with the planning commission, with any other kinds of town legislative issues that we have. That's where we are right now. So what we would like to do is, Cheryl, you kind of beat me to the punch by asking your committee to help. I would love to have someone from this committee to oversee what we're doing and to come back at the next meeting. So when we go to town meeting, we can get this done. This is one of the few proposals that's not putting any no one is putting their hand in your pocket. You won't have to pay anything for this. You're just going to set up a structure that's going to protect the town. And in fact, how that is protected and what penalties and all of that is part of the discussion that's going to be nailed down. But okay, so we nail down and we go in front of the town. The town may ask any kind of individual question. What I didn't know before, I know now. I'm going to stand right up and say, this is in this proposal. And part of this proposal is there is another committee created, not the Local Historic District Study Committee, but the Local Historic District Operations Committee. And they, in fact, will implement, change, adapt, and take care of it from there. All we want to do is get over the finish line of saying, yes, let's go ahead and do this, and let's get the language right. I'm ready for any questions.
So I'll start off, Larry. There were questions raised, I think, by the planning board and the Master Plan Implementation Committee about some of the specific language that was in the article for town meeting. And yes, that might have been some of the boilerplate. And I sent you that email in January with some of those questions and concerns. Has your committee so you've had a chance to look at them?
Yeah, we
have you?
And I, in fact, answered several of the questions in my discussion right there. Your number one question is, what's the interface in authority between the Historical Commission and Local Historic District Committee? Once we're done our work, we have no interface. We go away. And the next committee that comes in takes this proposal and actually makes it in action. But I think you're asking a broader question, Cheryl. I think you're asking, like, what is the pecking order? Say, for instance, we're talking about Milton Village. So the Muscle and Flow building, that's a great big brick building right across from the old Citizens Bank of America building. These are historic buildings, and they represent things that should be protected. Is it going to raise their taxes? No. Historically, in real estate terms, it raises their value, but he's not going to sell. So that's really not an issue. The issue is, what if he wants to put up a sign? And in our local historic district, but the town also has this, a sign committee. But in our thing, if we define it specifically, and if it is not in compliance with what we say, but it's in compliance with what the town says in their town sign committee, it's within the town to make that decision. And it would ultimately, would that be planning board or zoning board, Cheryl? I don't know who would be the final, but it would never be this local historic district. They sit below all the others.
Okay.
So that was the interface question.
Yeah, I guess like on the historic commission, for example, process, I'm just thinking, if a property owner wanted to apply for a demolition permit, they would do that at the building department. And then if it's a building, I'm forgetting the exact years, I think it's 50 years old, from the date that the application, if it's older than that, then the building commissioner would send it to the historical commission for review and to see if it's considered to be of historic value, and that the commission can impose a demolition delay of up to 2 years. I think that's what it is. So do they still have that? Is that still the process? I guess I'm trying to understand from a very practical point of view, from a property owner's point of view.
Right.
Because I have heard that some property owners in Milton Village are concerned about this district, this overlay district, this historic district, of what it may mean for what they can do with their properties. And so I just want to be clear so on the authority pieces, like there's zoning in place for the business district, there's overlay zoning, which allows for business and housing. And depending upon what a property owner wants to do, it might go to the planning board, but it might not. So if it's a business use and it meets the zoning requirements, it would just go to the building department. If it needed variances, it would go to the zoning board of appeal. If it was coming in under the overlay and into the planning board, then the historical commission would still have its role. So, there are these are the things that I think it's really important for property owners to understand. Like if they want to do something to their property, what's the path for approvals for them? And I understand the path for these other things that I just outlined. I just don't yet understand how this interfaces with those other paths. And I think it's important for us to understand that, because that's the piece that a lot of people are concerned that we don't tie the hands of business owners too much, that we want to encourage, redevelopment of these buildings. And I'm not suggesting that this is tying the hands of them. I just think it's important to understand how this process works to address those concerns or fears.
Well, you mentioned both residential and commercial, so I'm going to deal with those separately. But a local historic district, in the way that our proposal is written, in the way we imagined it, was never restrictive. We didn't care about colors. All we cared about was architecture and the historic is defined in several different ways. Historic, you're an historic building, you're an historic place, or somebody did something that was in history. And Milton Village has all three of that. Now, if any one of those specific areas, they're considered within the historic district, so they're all part of this. But if they aren't the one example that we're choosing as the example of brick architecture and new industrial wave. Many people don't know that the Industrial Revolution started right in Milton Village. It was the first place that industry used water power to run the factories. First place, and it went all over, and the world was changed in the industrial age. That happened in Milton. So we will protect those kinds of things. But speaking of that specifically, the person who owns much of Milton Village commercial property also owns the Muscle and Flow building, and he's trying to put a restaurant in there, and he has to be concerned with the water and all of those kinds of things that are outside the historic. His particular, and he's the largest commercial owner in Milton Village. His particular issue is it's just one more layer. He is absolutely right. It's one more hurdle, but it's not a layer of governance that's going to slow him down. Like, for instance, the fish that are in the Neponset River, and they have to be protected. If he's going to build a cafe that sits right on that, he's got to take that into consideration. That has nothing to do with the fact that we consider it a historical building, and we have nothing to say about those other issues. We are the lowest, from my understanding and my talking to the state people, we are the lowest level of compliance that you have to have. All we're doing is protecting these special buildings from further from disappearing, and they won't.
So there were I have a couple more questions, and then I'll ask the others. Have you modified the language at all from what was submitted last year? So that's the first question. The second question is this going to be on the warrant for the May town meeting?
Yes, we hope so. That's what we plan. Otherwise, it's another year for us. And frankly, we don't need another year. We need to get this done now. So we're hoping to be on the May.
And so have you modified the language at all since last year?
No, because we haven't heard back from your committee, the planning committee, the warrant committee. We're happy to change anything to make it compliant. We do believe that we're ultimately going to need an attorney to work on it because it's a language thing. But we first want to bat down all of the craziness around what happens with an historical district and the fear that another layer of governance is coming in, because it's really not the way this proposal is written.
So I think from my perspective as one who has worked with the zoning aspects of our regulations, it would be important for town council or an attorney to confirm what you said about the hierarchy of approvals.
Yes.
So that's clear. But there were also other things, I think, that were other questions. And if you haven't changed the language, I think some of those questions still remain in my mind.
And Cheryl, let's say again, if we don't have any help from the other committees, then.
So from that, are you asking literally for language suggestions then, Larry?
No, I'm suggesting what happened last year is that we met before your committee. You
Mhm.
were the one that suggested this, and I understand, and that's why I said the night of the presentation that we'll go back. I understood that we didn't pay attention to the language between the state because we had the state approval. We were just looking for the town approval. That people were going to nitpick the town, the proposal in very, very specific ways that are actually the way the proposal is written. It's all going to be determined with the next committee. What our committee was to do, which we've already done, is determine the area and why we chose the area, and then get this language acceptable to get through this committee so the next committee can be created.
I actually think this is a bylaw and it becomes a general bylaw, which
Right.
has power. So I don't
Right.
think it actually goes to the next committee. I think it sits here in this bylaw. And so that's why I think the concerns that were raised are need to be resolved in my mind.
I think that's a misnomer, though.
Yeah. So what's a misnomer?
I think it's a misnomer. You're absolutely right. This is a bylaw and legally binding as a bylaw.
Right.
Within this bylaw, we're setting up the next committee. And the next committee is going to take in there is language stating that the next committee is going to determine, like, penalties was one of those things. We don't care what's in there because we want to make it equitable. Nobody ever pays these penalties anyway. We studied so many different towns. Nobody ever pays these penalties. It's at worst a slap in the hand. It's not like chopping down a tree in the Henry's property, just getting it done. It's not like that.
Yeah, it's a bylaw though, which has teeth, and there are aspects of the bylaw which give power to this committee. And, so I do think property owners are going to look at this bylaw and say, this is what I'm bound to. I don't see, there are some things that the new commission will do later, but a lot of it's already here. And, there were some things that were even, like, in my mind, what is subject to this bylaw is any part thereof of any building or structure. And then, so there's a lot of power that's falls under this. And a structure is defined as a combination of materials other than a building, including but not limited to a sign, a fence, a wall, historic stone wall, a terrace, a walk, or a driveway. And so that a driveway would be subject to, this bylaw, a change in a driveway, which, so it's very broad. It encompasses a lot. And I really I don't believe that we should think of it as, well, it's not going to be enforced, because it could be enforced. So
No,
I'm going to turn it over now to other committee members for questions or comments. None?
So let me go a little bit further, because you and I, Cheryl, we've been part of this for a long time. I think that we can change any of this language to make it palatable, but I think that you're not reading it line by line to understand that our committee, once this is agreed, it's a bylaw, so it's legally binding. But the next step is who's going to be in that next committee, and it is that next committee that takes it and applies it and can adapt it in any way they like. And that's why it was written that way, and that's why the state asked me to do it in the manner that it was doing. So we want to make sure that people of Milton and the committees of Milton are comfortable with that language, because they're looking at state language, not town language.
But I imagine that the model bylaw gets adapted in each community in which it goes to, right? So
with the next committee that comes on. But
that aspect of it, which is just, I think I'm going to need to further understand because it's a bylaw. So I'm going to go. And Larry,
it's
just
confusing.
yes, yeah, and I just you're right. I did support, and I do support the idea of a local historic district. I think it can be beneficial to property owners to be in a historic district. And they can have opportunity for funding to help with rehab. It's the details and the process that I still have questions about. So I don't want to, kind of mix up that just having general overall support means support for every piece of the language that's here. And now with that, I'm going to go Roxanne, Elaine, and Regina.
Regina,
okay, thank you.
Me. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So Roxanne, Regina, Elaine, sorry.
I guess I started the trend for the questions then because there was nobody. So thank you for your work on this, Larry. Appreciate that. And I know that your committee has put in a lot of time and effort. So I do still have a few questions here. Obviously I like the idea. I think the idea and the concept is a good one. I know that last year when you came to us, I believe you were speaking or trying to meet individually with, I don't know if it was the warrant chair or the warrant committee to work on some of these issues. I think that would, I don't mean, have you done that this year at this point again, given that the language hasn't changed? And I thought there were some concerns about the language in it. And as far as another committee, and I love committees. There's too many committees. We have like 90 committees. So I'm not a big fan of that piece of it. If this is a bylaw, then it sort of will speak for itself, I think. And to Cheryl's point, and, and planning board. So I guess I'm wondering, Larry, have you spoken this year to warrant committee, tried to meet with them? And I apologize, I haven't followed that very closely. If you've done that, and also where you are in terms of, have you talked to town council about this through the town administrator, things like that? I just want to get a sense of what's been done since we last met with that regard.
Thanks, Roxanne. And you remember because you were on the select board that I presented back then, and I have reached out to every single committee, including yourself, since we went back in, and Cheryl was the first one to respond, not the town administrator, not Richard, not you, not any of these people. And I just want to get this right for the town.
So I guess the point being that have you, again, this is an article that I'm wondering, have you talked with the warrant committee? Have you tried to meet with them at all on this year? And also,
I say yes.
And so you have. And so what was the feedback that you got this year?
They didn't have time for me until later this month.
Okay.
Is what they said. There's a lot going on in this town, and this is what I'm interested in. And I said, well, why don't you get? But so I understand. I understand the priority. Yeah. So we have to kind of bulk load all of these. They're not major changes, they're minor tweaks. So it speaks to the language here in town because it's a bylaw and it becomes a legal document that it's right. I do think I need a lawyer on my committee. I've said that for a couple of years. We just can't seem to find one to help.
With just a quick follow-up, with regards to what you have already, have you sent it to Mr. Milano and asked him to forward it to town council to review?
Absolutely, yes.
And has that been done?
I have no idea. I have called, emailed, and texted, got no response. I know he's very busy as well. I've also talked to his assistant multiple times.
Okay, I'll try to follow up on that. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want, we want to get it done, and we understand what needs to be done. I've got Cheryl's notes. I'll get warrant committee will ultimately, when I did my work last year, it was with the person who is now the chairman of the warrant committee. And they have already promised that they're going to give us time this month.
Okay, thank you.
So one thing I'll say now that I think it's coming a little clearer to me, I don't believe that I can help with legal questions, Larry, but I
Yeah.
can help with some of the other language questions. And it may be that they're questions that I need to ask, or if maybe you can show me in the historic district context that you've been looking into, or the context that you've had with the state Mass Historic Commission, where some of these information is. So I don't mind trying to help on those pieces, but on the legal pieces, I do think we have to figure out how town council can help with this.
I'm
Okay,
not
with
even,
that.
yeah, I'm not even dressed like a lawyer right now. Yeah, we need someone who can look at the language in the correct way.
Okay. And I'm going to see if I can ask Kathleen O'Donnell if she has any time to look at this too, being an attorney, the chair of the ZBA now, and on the jurisdictional piece, because she may have an idea. She's not going to replace town council, but at least we can get her feedback. So was Regina, you were next?
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, thank you so much for your work on this. I really appreciate it. I am feeling like my eternal mantra is it's good to get off the pot time, right? Like that we just need to get this done. I agree with you at the same time. We need to get it right. I love that. I was one of the excuse me, folks that had some concerns, only coming from the lens of knowing in other places how historic districts have been used inequitably and have caused inequities. It sounds to me like the teeth for this are sort of embedded in the gums, so to speak, of the bylaws, that what we're seeing as like requirements are softer than that. Is that valid?
Well, I think when we started to put it together, the thing that we heard, the feedback we heard was it's going to ruin our town. It's going to ruin, I can't do what I want to do and all of that. And we were very careful that we want Milton to continue to grow, but we want to protect parts of it that have been here forever. And that was the only thing. So we didn't care about color or, if it's a federal building, we'd like to keep it as a federal building. If it's colonial, it should stay as colonial.
Yeah. Now my next question is actually for Carol. So I'm seeing a parallel here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. When there was the planning article from our most recent meeting, and there were things that were specified in that article that folks were like, oh yeah, but that doesn't have to say that way. We can change it later. Does that sound like a parallel here, Sarah, to
well, site plan, yeah, you're talking about site plan approval article?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know the right language.
Yeah,
but yeah.
well, the site plan approval article applies to, I have to look back to the Milton Village zoning to see if it's just a special permit or if it's requiring a special permit and site plan approval. And if this is my jurisdictional questions, right? Because there is authority in this article to reject. So we also have in that Milton Village overlay zoning incentives, so you can get like a bonus incentive to do historic preservation. So if the planning board is reviewing an application in which the planning board has deemed in consultation with the historical commission that it's meeting their criteria to get the bonus, but let's say the local historic district committee says, no, it's not up to our standards, we're going to deny it. Does that override the planning board? so Larry's saying no, but I just need to understand that from an attorney, right? So, but as far as this changing any zoning, sorry.
Go ahead.
So changing any zoning requires a vote of town meeting, just like changing something in this regulation would require a vote of town meeting. So what this next committee is authorized to do is some of the design guidelines, and that was one of my comments too. If they're going to develop different guidelines, let's say an applicant comes in and meets the guidelines that this new committee forms, but doesn't meet the guidelines that the planning board has, then how does that, is that going to tie somebody in knots on how they are going to meet both of these? And it's all comes back to what the approval hierarchy is, and really some consistency. If something is historic in one set of documents, how you treat that historic component, it should be consistent across other documents and other jurisdictions. So, Regina, I may have gone off target completely from what you were asking. Sorry, but you're muted there, Regina.
Sorry. No, I think so. Then I misunderstood something about the article, the article that was before us at town meeting, because there were some aspects labeled A, B, C, D, all the way to G, that someone had an issue with. I think it was either G or Q, and were satisfied that it could be changed later. Is that ringing a bell, Cheryl?
Does with me.
If you put something into the rules and regulations, like that's separate from bylaw, then it doesn't have to go back to town meeting. But if it's in a zoning bylaw or it's in this general bylaw, it has to go back to town meeting to change it.
So that's so strange, because that's not okay. All right. I mean, that makes sense, and that's what I was operating under at the time. But two people, when I came down to ask a question, two people answered the question preemptively by saying, no, that can always be changed later.
But that later is at a town meeting.
That they still at a town meeting?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
all right.
and they can be changed later. They're not like cast in stone.
Is it a 50% vote, or is it a 2/3? It's just a 50, right?
2/3 is anything except housing related.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about zoning. General bylaws are the same, Roxanne? Yes.
I believe so.
Okay. I'm not quite as familiar on the general bylaws. Sorry, Roxanne, Regina, were you?
No, that was fine. I just wanted to thread the needle and make sure that I understood. So now I get kind of what you were saying, that if it's in there, it's got to be, enforceable and all that. And that, yeah, okay, all right, that makes sense.
I guess, my concern is some of these provisions seem very restrictive, and I'm concerned that they could be too restrictive. But then the other piece for me is really just the jurisdictional, the sort of aspect, the sort of how these approvals end up working.
And the legal language.
Yeah. And Elaine, next.
Thanks.
One other thing that's been thrown into this is the liaison between the Massachusetts Historical Commission and us here in Milton. She left, and they don't have anybody to replace her yet. So this process, if we get approved in May, we still have to go back to the state to get approval. Most likely they're going to approve because theirs is the base, and we're just tweaking it to make it more Milton-esque for us. And that'll be fine with them because they've already approved our template.
Okay, thanks, Larry. Elaine?
Hi, Larry. How's it going?
Are we done yet?
Well, I just wanted to acknowledge the immense effort that's gone into this project. I can tell I was blown away, honestly, when you said 4 years. And I'm sorry to hear about the challenges that your committee has faced. I can imagine that's really frustrating. I also understand and respect the intent behind, this historic district and the goal of preserving significant buildings. I think for me, I continue to have, some concerns that I expressed, I think the last time it was presented, just particularly regarding the selection of certain buildings for inclusion, in this district, and also the 2-year demolition delay that Cheryl mentioned. I feel like that's a bit excessive. I think while just to the point on the buildings, I think, many of the buildings are undoubtedly historic and architecturally important. And I think there's also some buildings, at least what I recall from looking at the document you had shared the last time, that may be outdated and disrepair, not really contributing positively to the community. And my concern is that preservation, if it's applied too broadly, could hinder our growth and development goals. And I don't have a full list of the buildings in front of me now to provide specific examples, but one that comes to mind is the extra space storage building. That one really stood out in my mind. So in light of these concerns, I'm wondering, is there flexibility, and maybe this has already been answered, so I apologize if that's the case, but is there flexibility for future committees to reconsider the buildings included in this district?
In this process, you can include a single building or an area. And we chose to include an area, which would include all of those buildings. Now, that doesn't mean all of those buildings, they all fall under the same thing, but they are not considered. So if somebody who has, the third least attractive colonial up on High Street, they can do whatever they want because we don't care. Because they aren't the best example. So it has to be a single example that it is the preserved one. And what gets preserved is anything you can see from the street, from the public street. So if you want to blow out and build up your back, you could do that. There's a lot of confusion about it, but the F.A. King building, that old plumbing building, red building that's been falling down, and there's a prime example. That's in the historic district. Now, they're never going to rebuild that wood building, but what would be said, and we had our discussion in our meeting about that. It's owned by a private individual. They have every right to let it, deteriorate, unless we decide that they don't. That's not my bit. That's not my committee.
But could they? But so that building could not be rebuilt if they decided to tear it down. They'd have to, like, what would that? Can you elaborate on that process?
I wish I had not even said that. That is conjecture on our part. It is in the historical district, but it isn't. There are no other wood frame buildings there, and that one has been. What is it when the arrow? It's condemned. That's condemned. It's not structurally, So I can't answer that question. It'd be such a great spot. There should be something great there.
Is it possible to give some indication? And I think you have in a lot of the images that we saw. Is it possible to kind of tag the buildings that are up for major consideration for this, and those that are more or less safe from the preservation?
We added everything that the state required us to add. And so all of those buildings are listed in our proposal in the way that the state to become an historical thing, anybody can do it. You can have a brand new condo and you can say, I want to be historic, send the money in, and it can happen that way. It's that simple if you want to do it individually. But if you want to do it as we're doing it as a town, you have to follow other guidelines, which we have.
I just wanted to bring up one item that you'd mentioned, or we had been mentioned, and that's the historical preservation. And as I recall, that's not this. That's not what this is necessarily. The 2 year delay. That's part of the law already. Has been for quite a few years now. It went from 18 months to 24 months, like 3 or 4 years ago. But I mean, that's part of it, right? I mean,
Yes.
that's
not us anyway.
right. Right.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to confirm that. All right.
Great
Thanks.
comment. Thank you.
So, I guess it's unfortunate, as others have said, that you haven't had a response back from the other bodies that expressed some concern about this last year. And given that the warrant, I believe, Roxanne, is closed or closing very soon, it seems like this language will be exactly the same that goes to the warrant, which, again, I have the warrant from last year here, and these green sheets that come with it are the changed language, which becomes kind of difficult because how much is changed could be ruled out of scope by town council. It can be deemed to be too much for members to think that these get mailed to the town or they're out in the public. So these changes that come later, some can be viewed to be too late, to consider that many changes. So I'm a little concerned about the timing and how much is already going to probably be in the May town meeting warrant. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, Roxanne, in terms of how much change could be done in the language of that article between now and town meeting.
Here's the reason I'll never be a politician. I am so frustrated with this. I am so frustrated with the slowness, lack of response, with everybody gets in there and nitpicks thing. I will never run for office. I'm just trying to retire.
I'm not trying to throw hurdles in your way. I'm just trying to be realistic about what I understand about process.
Well, I think the thing is, sorry, go ahead.
Everybody who joined this committee joined it because we love Milton and we love the history of Milton. We wanted to be part of something that sat in the annals of our history, and years later, this is what happened here because we believe that. And I'm just trying to get through understanding what I need to do to get it passed. And my committee is as well. We have one new member, but the other members have been with us since the beginning. We need a lawyer.
So I mean,
I would never say that in my day, ever. But
so I would say that there's a lot on there's a lot of stuff that it's going to be on the warrant, a lot of big articles as well. So I don't know. I mean, the thing is that the warrant committee has to review all of these articles, and they have a lot of meetings. There's a lot for them to get through. That being said, I believe last year you had said that with one of the warrant committee members, who I think is the chair that's the chair. He's an attorney. So I'm wondering if he had given you some feedback on certain things. Because the other thing is ultimately it's really any of these articles get reviewed by town council. So when you did email, I did forward your email on to Nick Milano. And so like I said, I can follow up on that end. I'm happy to do so. And
Please.
See but I also don't want to say that I would guarantee that this would be ready for the May one, only because it also has to get reviewed from us. We have to look at it and warrant committee. And there's a process there too. So, and they have a lot on their plate. So I don't want to. Sorry.
Go ahead. I just wanted to, you're thinking there'll likely be a town meeting in October, right? Or a fall.
There's usually a fall one. I mean, this year it was February. but it just depends, you know, but usually we have a fall one. So
Larry, I know that
yeah.
you don't want to hear that about, you know, further time, but I think you're more
Brazilian.
realistic. You're more realistically likely to get this done for the fall. And the reason is that you can get changes done in an easier process. And, you know, maybe, you know, when will your committee be, you meet monthly or do you meet as needed?
Well, we meet monthly, but we haven't been meeting monthly because we couldn't get anybody to respond. Now I have a real sense of what we need to look at and why we need to look at it from your perspective, from this group. And I know the warrant commission is going to call me, and I'll be in front of the planning board too. Everybody's got a lot to do, and I know I'm not the priority. I'm only the priority in my own mind.
But I would say keep trying to get these meetings set up as quickly as possible. And then from there, you know, back off to the fall town meeting, honestly. But I don't think you want to have people think, okay, well, then that means I'm going to wait to put you on the agenda until the summer, because that's not going to give you enough time either. So I will reread the article. Now that I know it's the same, I'd like to reread it with the comments that we had in mind and the notes that I had put in the sideline of it before. And Roxanne, I think would be very beneficial if town council could give us some idea of the hierarchy of these approvals. And as I said, I'll talk to Kathleen O'Donnell and see what her experience has been in other municipalities where she's been town council. Yeah. And then I can reach out to you directly, Larry, and then we can, you know, come back to the committee here after we think we've made a little progress or you've been able to reach more people. Does that make sense?
I want to thank Brian O'Halloran, who's on the call here. He's that little black thing that says Brian O'Halloran.
And he's on your committee as well?
Yeah, he's on my committee. I don't want to do all these by myself. We speak as a committee, and I am being.
And we have speaking of speaking, I see Dick, who hasn't spoken yet, has his hand raised. So Dick, you have the floor.
Okay, thanks, Larry. Nice job on this. Quick question: what do you want from this committee?
What do I want?
Yes.
I want to be done. I want it to be accepted and to be done because I've done my duty for my town. I'm not quite sure what you're asking. I get nothing. I'm a volunteer.
Well, no, stop. Wait a minute. Slow down. What I'm asking is, what do you want this committee to do for you and your committee?
Well, what I would like to do is put forth a document that gets accepted by the town and helps this town be better 100 years from now. That's what I want.
So you want this committee to support your work and the committee's work. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. We don't pass unless we get this committee to support. And
last year, Dick. Sorry, Dick, just so quickly for context. Last year, when they came to us, we raised as a committee a number of questions and comments, which were passed along maybe late in the process, just like we're talking about now. And so at town meeting, you know, the warrant committee noted that they and our committee had raised some concerns that we thought it should go back for further study. And so that's what the body voted. And so in January, when Larry reached out to me, I just sent that email recapping some of the concerns and comments that we had raised when we met last year. So I think what he sounds like you're looking for, Larry, is more specific ways to resolve those questions and comments. You're looking for us to be more specific about what we would change or what we would like you to do.
And what you also gave me, because I remember all that, I took notes and I remember all that. What you gave me in this meeting right now is the ability to go forward and make those changes, you know, and then resubmit them. Hey, what does this sound like to you? I see Dick's hands are still up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll put it down, Larry. You answered it. But once again, I just want to make sure that your expectations of this committee is realistic in what we can do. I think that the warrant committee and the planning board would appear to me to have most of the sway in terms of, and I guess the board of select board sway in terms of this enactment. But you're looking at this committee to support the work of you and your committee. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Sure. Yes. But I'm also looking for the support of the other committees too. This needs to be and should be an easy pass once we get the language right.
Okay. Thank you.
It's not going to cost the town anything. It's just going to make the town better.
Okay, so Brian, you have your hand up?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Cheryl. Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate what we heard from Larry earlier, is that a lot of this is just a copy and paste from the state guideline implementation. And we're just, and we're looking at the other communities that have implemented this. And, the model that we're following is one that's kind of already been, is tried and true. So I guess that my conclusion on that is that, let's favor, the state guidelines around this, and that they've done a good enough job, and that the other communities that have implemented this have done so successfully. And frankly, I think that's what we're presenting here.
With the language changes.
Okay, so thank you, Brian. And so I think that pretty much concludes our discussion for tonight, don't you think, Larry and others?
I think I have my marching orders, and
okay.
I know what to do, and you and I will talk and we'll get further. Thank you, this committee, for your help.
Okay.
I'm going to send out retire Larry soon. Everybody.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
All right. Let me get back to the agenda. So our next meeting date, April 1. Does that still work for everyone?
Mm-hmm.
And should we set a May date? Let's see. The first week of May. Does that May 5th is a Monday?
Usually we have town meeting. It's usually the first Monday, right?
Oh yeah, you're right. It's going to be.
Yeah.
All right.
And I don't know how long it's going to go. So usually we book the first week, right? And then into the second slowly. But I don't know. We haven't really discussed everything yet.
Okay.
So that.
I'm just thinking that we haven't made a lot of progress on the draft report, so I don't want to get too far out. We have our end of our committee or the duration of this committee is to be October. So are we feeling good that we're going to get the report done and with our recommendations by October? All right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, we just got
so let's should we, since the first is a Tuesday and it would be 4 weeks to do the last week of April rather than doing in May, would folks be available on, let's
29th.
say the 28th or the 30th?
Not the 30th for me.
Yeah.
How
I
about
don't
the
think I can do this.
I can do 28th
28th?
or 29th.
That's the night for other meetings, right?
I thought Roxanne has them on Tuesday nights, right?
Yeah, I think, well, the 29th election day. Yeah.
You'll be busy.
Yeah, so,
because otherwise, if we wait for after town meeting, we're looking at May 12th. if we don't go into
Oh.
that second week. I mean, it's very well, could be that we'll go into a second week if it's a busy article, warrant.
Unless it's later in the week, we probably
Is
won't.
May 1st out?
May 1st is Thursday.
Thursday.
You want to do Thursday?
Do you have planning board?
Not the first Thursdays.
I have a conflict that night, sorry.
You have a
Okay.
conflict that night, okay.
Um,
Let's see. Well, what if we moved, what if we did our meeting March 31st? And then 4 weeks from then would be what? Same thing, huh?
I've got a hold on the first.
On the first, yeah, me too.
what about, I'm sorry, what about in May? I'm just looking at May. Usually if it was in that second week, Cheryl, usually it's not a Wednesday. Like I'm thinking if we met, if the town meeting's probably the 5th, 6th, and probably the 8th, and then maybe Monday and Tuesday, it usually, I've never seen it go more than that. Have you, Cheryl? Go more than 5?
No.
May 7th.
I'm sorry?
May 7th?
No, not that week. That's the first week of May. It would have to be that second week.
Yeah, I mean,
14th.
we would have likely
Yeah.
a planning board on the 15th, so I could do meetings every night of the week for 2 weeks straight. But
Well, I mean, we don't even have a sense yet. Like I haven't seen,
yeah,
but I'm just thinking the 14th, maybe that's a Wednesday of that second week of town meeting. Because it
alright.
may or may not go that long. I have no idea yet. It's just a thought.
Yeah, it's going to be like, what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks in between.
How about the 19th?
Of, are you looking at
May.
April? Oh, May.
Well,
I'm not around.
So,
That's a Saturday, April 19th.
No, May 19th.
We usually meet this, well, I mean, I don't know if we're going to meet then or not. I have no idea.
We also could do the meeting in June could be early June so that we have kind of too close together, and because there's a lot going on with town meeting and the election, so going that 6 weeks might not be a bad idea.
if there's no conflict, May 15th, we only have planning board on the 8th and the 22nd. If you want to make it May 15th.
Can you say that
Okay.
one more time?
May 15th?
I have a conflict.
okay, so it's the 8th and the 22nd that the planning board meets. Okay. So if we said the 19th, is that what someone had suggested?
Yeah, we do the 19th and the 9th. Is that right?
May 19th?
Yeah, and June 9th. Pretty close together. Or
Yeah.
What if we, did we say I think you had suggested the 14th. Roxanne, does that work for folks?
I don't know. That's a Wednesday. I'm looking at it.
works for me.
Works for me.
All right.
I could
The
do it.
14th? Okay. May
May
14th,
14th, right?
May 14th and June 9th?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, great. Approval of minute. We have the January minute that was sent this morning. Are there any?
I just had, sorry, go
I'm
ahead.
pretty
Tony.
sure I was there, but I'm not listed on it. I missed the other one that was the quickie one
Okay.
10-minute call, but I'm fairly certain I was at that meeting.
Okay, so let me just do a screen share here. Where are we here? Minutes. Okay, so we'll. Okay, and then
Well,
Roxanne, you had,
okay with me.
I had one thing under annual report review, the
Okay.
first sentence after the annual report's due date. So for that line about member Musto had a comment about the library parking, whether MPIC should expand on this topic in the report. I wrote member Musto asked for further clarification of library parking in the report, because that's what I had asked for, right?
all right. All right, so let me just read that again.
I wrote member Musto asked for further clarification of library parking in the report.
Did I get that right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Good to me.
Me too.
Regina?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
All right.
I move that
So,
we accept the minutes then.
okay.
Second.
Actually, hold on one second. Did we can we clarify the MAPC visioning contract discussion and revote? Because it doesn't really say why we revoted, and I think it's reasonable to have that in there.
So what would you like to suggest, Regina?
Well, I'm not entirely sure, but that members raised questions about Member Campbell Malone's involvement with the Pagoda Circle initiative, and to avoid any appearance of, what would you say, impropriety?
Maybe conflict,
Conflict of interest.
interest, maybe.
Yeah. Member Campbell Malone was asked to recuse herself.
All right, you get to see my typing skills here. Does that do it?
Mm-hmm.
I'd accept that.
Okay, so a motion by Tabor. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor by roll call. Let me just stop the share. Roxanne?
Yes.
Tabor?
Yes.
Regina?
Yes.
Dick?
Yes.
Elaine?
Yes.
Okay. I don't see anyone here for a citizen speak. So that brings us to the 10-year report and spreadsheet updates. I last checked the folder a couple days ago, and I didn't see any additional content from what Regina submitted before. So this is my nudge as chair, nudge to all of us, because we have agreed to write sections ourselves. So now that we've got this gap of 6 weeks between this meeting and our next, let's all try and get something in there. I started to look again at the 10-year report, the spreadsheet rather, and there were some things that I emailed Cheyenne about just for updates. So if everybody could also take a look at what they were assigned in that spreadsheet, just to see if there's any other updates. I think that could be helpful. Like, for example, I asked Cheyenne about the open space committee, and because that was the last update was like 22 and 2023. So we're into 2025. I think we want that spreadsheet to be current at the end of the year when we put that as an appendix in the report. So does anybody else have any discussion on this topic for tonight, since we're past a 2-hour mark on this meeting.
So should we ask everyone to bring at least an outline, if not a first draft?
Yeah, so what I think we had was suggested at the last meeting, I think, is to have people use a shared document so we could see. So that document is in a shared folder that Cheyenne shared. So Cheyenne, if you don't mind just sharing that back out after this meeting, it's the OneDrive folder. And this, I think you also had included the spreadsheet in that OneDrive folder. So
Yes.
that's the way it worked well for the spreadsheet to have everyone update the same document.
Right.
Yeah. I think it would be beneficial to do the
I guess I'm just asking what the specific ask is. Do you want an outline, a first draft? What is it that you
I think you developed an outline, right, Regina? And so I think an outline from, let's get a content outline for all the sections, and then we can get into further development of that content.
That sounds
Make
great.
sense? Okay. All right, so I'll otherwise entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, Dick?
Yes.
Regina?
Yes.
Tabor?
Yes.
Roxanne?
Yes.
Elaine?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Thanks. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.
Night.